now my absolute pleasure to introduce Professor Cathy Said, who's joining us from Melbourne, which is a very special treat. Sorry about the weather. And so she's the inaugural Professor of Physiotherapy at Western Health and the University of Melbourne, and she's a Program Director with the Australian Institute of Musculoskeletal Science. And Cathy has over 25 years' experience working in neurological and gerontological rehabilitation, and she's passionate about preventing falls and bridging the divide between research evidence and practice, and particularly with how we can better meet the needs of people from culturally and linguistically diverse communities. And that's what she's going to tell us about today. Welcome, Cathy.
Thanks very much, Cathy, for that introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you all today. It's really lovely to come and visit you up here in Sydney. Let's just make sure I can get this working. Next. There we go. And I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we're meeting on today, as well as the lands of the people where most of this research has been conducted. So the research has been conducted on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi and Bunurong people, so that's around Melbourne, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also just like to acknowledge that I'm presenting this research today really on behalf of a very large research team. So this actually doesn't include everyone in the team, but you will see some familiar faces. And I'd also just particularly like to call out the consumer representatives that are part of the research team and have really been with us from the beginning of this journey. And also like to acknowledge the funders that actually have funded this work, because it wouldn't have happened without them. So I'm not going to talk about the problem of falls. We all know here that falls are a major problem for older people, and we also know that there is really now good evidence about what we can do to reduce falls, and particularly for people living in the community. We know that exercise is actually a really good way of actually reducing falls risk. But the other thing that we know, but we don't always necessarily, I suppose, think about when we're talking about falls prevention, is that Australia is a really multicultural community. So 1 in 3 older Australians were actually born overseas, and most of those people are born in countries where English is not their first language. And in some areas of Australia, so particularly around Sydney and Melbourne, that proportion can actually be as high as 50%. So as Cathy mentioned, I work at Western Health. The region around Western Health is one of the most culturally diverse regions in Australia, and there our community, certainly around 50% of older people were not born in Australia. So we know that for people who are not born in Australia, there are some specific barriers to accessing healthcare and health resources. And we also know that they are really underrepresented in research, and there are often barriers. They're often excluded from research trials, and there are certainly barriers to their participation. And so if we don't include people in research, it actually further increases healthcare inequities. So that's really where this project, emerged from. So we've been lucky enough to receive funding for 3 phases of projects. So the first phase, I think, was actually really critical, and this is where we actually co-designed with people from culturally, linguistically diverse communities and healthcare workers and service providers that work with these communities, what a program would look like that would help support older people to actually participate in exercise to reduce their risk of falls. So it's really about trying to help increase the uptake of evidence. The second phase that we've received funding for is to actually run a pilot trial, and the main focus of the pilot trial is actually assessing how well we can actually implement the intervention that we've designed. And also actually really testing out our trial protocol, because anyone that's been involved in running a randomised controlled trial knows that it's always more difficult than you anticipate, and certainly we were anticipating we would have some additional challenges with the people from ethnically diverse communities. And then the final phase is to run a hybrid effectiveness implementation trial, which would also have an economic evaluation. So today I'm going to be focusing mainly on the first phase, the co-design, and a little bit about the pilot trial. So, co-designing what is now called Move Together, Reduce Falls. So this was really took us nearly 2 years to run this project. We decided to focus on 3 specific communities. So we selected the Italian, Arabic-speaking and Cantonese and Mandarin-speaking communities. And the reason we selected these communities is these are in the top 10, these are a large proportion of ethnically diverse communities within Australia and within the area that we were working, but they're also quite ethnically diverse from one another. So, for example, we know Greek and Vietnamese are also within the top 10, but we specifically decided we wanted to choose populations that were different from one another. We had a research team of, why is this not forwarding? There we go, it's forwarded twice now. We had a research team that increased as we moved through the trial. So it started off with 20 people, and as we moved through, we added some team members. And again, most of these were older people from ethnically diverse communities who decided to join the project. And throughout the project, we ran a series of 15 workshops with 75 participants. And of those participants, 63 of these were older people from ethnically diverse communities, and nearly 2/3 of them required interpreters. So again, this was really quite a mammoth task, actually running workshops alongside with interpreters, bicultural workers, but bringing people together to actually hear what their thoughts were on the barriers to participating in exercise and how we could better support them. And we, as I said, we also did have healthcare workers and other service providers in the workshops as well. And this is not working. Let's just, maybe I've got to... and the other thing we did at the end was we also tested the prototype with 6 older people, just to actually make sure things worked the way that we thought they would. So I'll talk a little bit now about the actual program that we have developed. So the first thing to note is that it really is based on the evidence. So we certainly took on board things that people told us about what was important to them, but we still had to be guided by what the evidence was telling us about falls prevention and exercise for falls prevention. The program is an individually delivered program, so it's one-on-one, and it's people provided with 10 to 12 sessions over a 9-month period. And again, this is partly because we want to try and get people to engage in exercise over a longer term. Everyone will receive 10 sessions. The other 2 sessions are optional, and they're provided at a time that, if they're needed, and that's chosen by the person to help them re-engage with the program. And again, the reason for this was we know that lots of older people have reasons why they will stop exercising, and it could be because they become unwell or they have carer responsibilities, and that's often they need a little bit of assistance to get back into the routine. So that's when the additional sessions will be used. It's delivered by healthcare professionals, and so at the moment it's being delivered by physiotherapists. And again, this is something that older people told us was really important. It needed to be delivered by someone that they trusted. Because it's based on evidence, the exercises are tailored and progressed as people move through the program. And there's also behaviour change strategies are really embedded throughout the program to really support people to actually how they can integrate this into their day-to-day lives. So the program is delivered predominantly in people's houses, so there is the option for people to come into the hospital if they prefer. So far, everyone's quite happy to have it in their home. But we also are trying to embed some telehealth with this. And again, this is to actually try and make sure that we can, the program will be scalable, but also make it a little bit easier for people to access. The other thing we've done is we're giving people the option to participate with a buddy or a friend or a family member. So when people tell us that they would like to participate in the program, we ask them if there's someone in their family or a friend that they think would also like to join. And then if there is someone that they can identify, they do the program together. And then the reason we're doing that is because we know social supports can be a really important supporter of physical activity. For some people would just prefer to do things on their own, and that's fine. But the other thing we also are running is some online peer support sessions. And again, these are facilitated by a physiotherapist with an interpreter and with a community peer support member, so that again, there's really the opportunities for people to talk about their experiences and their challenges and share how they're going with the program. We don't really need the audio, but that's okay. So this is just an example of one of the resources that we've developed, and again, this is based to address some of the feedback that participants in the workshops gave us. So they really wanted to see people that they could relate to, older people, people that weren't just white and young doing the exercises. They wanted to see people like themselves. And so all of the videos have been prepared with narrations in different languages. We've also produced a range of written exercises, again, that have also been translated into various languages. We had put a lot of time into actually developing the wording for the exercise programs. So again, a lot of people, even in their own language, have got quite low levels of literacy. And so again, we had to think very carefully about how we worded the exercise programs. And we also have developed a range of educational resources to help address some of the knowledge gaps that we identified in the workshops. And again, these have all been translated into various languages. So we've now running the pilot trial. So for the pilot trial, we are recruiting 60 people, again from the same communities, so Italian, Arabic speaking and Chinese communities. They'll be randomised to either receive the program, so Move Together Reduce Falls, or to a control group where they will receive access to the co-designed, culturally adapted resources. The program will run for 12 months and they'll have assessments in 6 and 12 months. But the primary outcome that we're really interested in for the pilot trial is looking at the implementability of the intervention. So is it acceptable to people? Can we deliver it the way in which we intended? And as well also looking at how feasible the actual protocol is. So can we collect falls data, for example? Can we collect all of the outcome measures that we're intending to collect, just to make sure that everything works? So some key learnings from what we've learnt so far. The one key learning that I haven't popped on there that I probably should have is that in actual fact, there really is, when we were doing the workshops, there was certainly an awareness that falls were a problem for older people, but in most of the workshops, many people actually really didn't know that there was anything that could be done about it. So they just thought this is one of the things that happens as you get older. There's actually not much point talking to your doctor or telling anyone about it because it just happens. So that's probably one of the key things, again, that has driven some of the development of our resources. One of the other things we've learned is really translating meaning and concepts is really complex. So it's not just as simple as just, writing it all out and sending it off to be translated. Sometimes you've actually got to really talk through what it is that you're meaning. So one example is in the workshops we were running, we were talking about balance, and some of the members of one of the workshops said, "What do you mean when you're talking about balance?" And even the interpreter then said, Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you mean. So we actually had to take a step back and actually talk about what balance is. It's really hard to ask someone to do something to change their balance if they don't actually know what it is you're talking about. Some of the other things for the physios in the room, when we were writing up the exercise programs, we were asking people to tap something, and again, that actually didn't translate across. So we actually had to think about how we could reword things to make sure that we got what we wanted out of into the instructions. This probably applies to all research, but it also really applies again, particularly for research when you're working with ethnically diverse communities. You need to really allow adequate time and really be prepared for additional complexities. So it took us a long time in that co-design process because we had to build a team, and we really had to build trust within the team. And we had to take the time to make sure that everyone was on board and understood where we were going. Certainly the same thing in the workshops. It took us probably a little bit more time to get things running, but once we engaged with the communities, the enthusiasm for the project has really been quite amazing. Additional complexities, some of the things we've found is even just really simple things like trying to book appointments with people because we need interpreters to assist us with that. Often people are now a bit reluctant to answer phone calls from people that they don't know, so we've got to navigate our ways through that. So all of those sorts of things, just take a little bit more time. One of the other things I think, again, that it's really key for anything where you're working with people, but again, probably just being a little bit more conscious when you're working with people from ethnically diverse communities is really don't make assumptions about what people know or what they would like to do or, about anything. So again, certainly one of the things that came up when we were talking to people from the Cantonese and Mandarin communities is they said, everyone thinks we all like Tai Chi. Some of them do like Tai Chi, some of them like Tai Chi a lot, but there are also some of them that actually don't want to do Tai Chi. So it's just being really, and again, I'm not meaning to say, I know we all know this, but I think it really is important that we really think about what assumptions you're making when we're working with people. The other thing which was probably a little bit surprising is there was, it was a bit surprising to us that I suppose originally conceived the project, is there is a real tension between being respectful of people's culture, but also the risk of othering people from other communities. So when we were working with the various community groups, one community group were really, a few people within one community wanted to know why something needed to be developed for them and why it couldn't just be something that was given to everyone. And that was something we actually thought spent quite a bit of time thinking about. And at the end of the day, we decided it was still actually because of the healthcare inequities that we know people from ethnically diverse communities have, and because they're underrepresented in research, we felt it was actually really important that we still did specifically target people from ethnically diverse communities. But I suppose it is just one of those things that you've got to be careful about how you talk about this type of work. And the last thing I would say is that really, particularly for all work, but I think particularly for this kind of work, really strong relationships with stakeholders are absolutely crucial. And particularly for our project, obviously, strong relationships with interpreting services have been, again, absolutely, the project would not have worked without it. We've got funding for interpreters, we've got funding for translators, but it's actually not just about funding, it's also about how you actually work with these services to get the best results that you can. if anyone wants to know more, the other thing I should have said, I know I'm probably running over time, naming the program. We spent more time naming the program than we did actually naming my first child, because we did need to choose a name that meant something to the people that are going to do the program, but that would also translate. So, but if anyone wants to know more, that's where you can find it out. Sorry, I've run over time.
Squeeze in some questions. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Cathy. We can squeeze in a couple of questions. We have there's one coming up here. And then, yes, please put your questions online as well.
Hello, thank you for the chat, very informative. Did you ever come across any unhelpful beliefs or attitudes towards exercise, in that some communities feel that exercise isn't for them or they don't need to be exercising, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a really that's a great question, and I suppose we certainly did come across some beliefs, but I think also we're very careful about when we talk about it that we try. Obviously, even within communities, people have different beliefs. So I think when we're talking about this work, we often don't. We try not to talk about people from this community have this specific belief, but it's talking about some of the beliefs that older people from ethnically diverse communities have, and some of them are quite similar to people from non-ethnic diverse communities. Certainly, some of the beliefs that came up were things that I'm too old to exercise, or exercise is something that only younger people should do. And that's things we've heard before. Certainly other things, we saw some gendered beliefs about exercise. So again, that women shouldn't necessarily exercise, so quite different. And we did have some things from some people came out, had beliefs around you actually shouldn't do things like too many steps, because that will wear out your knees. So I think rather than thinking about what beliefs a specific people may have based on their ethnic background, it's probably useful to explore what beliefs people have on an individual basis. Did that sort of answer your question?
Yes, Thank you very much.
Good question, good answer, well done. We won't have to take one more in the room. I'll let Jasmine find someone while I ask about some of the online questions, basically about the availability of the fabulous resources that have been developed.
So not available just yet, because we are obviously still piloting them and running them through the trial, but the intention is that if everything goes the way we hope it will, and once we're happy with the resources, that we'll be making them available. Yeah.
Fantastic, that's very generous, because they look like amazing resources, don't they? One question over here. Oh, same question. All right. I think that was all. Is there another one in the room? All right, I'll just ask you quickly, Cathy, any tips for working with such diverse groups?
Have a great team and have a team that have got good skills, because again, really, as I said, having your stakeholder engagement and getting the right people that can answer all your questions is probably the key thing.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Cathy. That was amazing. So we've got the small gift and certificate for you. And while we're doing that, so we'd like you to fill in the online survey. Oh, there you go, and the QR code's there.